Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France. I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor. Silence sliced through the ballroom like a knife. 200 executives in tuxedos and evening gowns turned to stare as Kira Bennett stood at the top of the grand staircase of Chicago's Peninsula Hotel. Her red dress blazing like fire against the white marble, her dark hair cascading over bare shoulders. In her hand, she held a microphone. On the screen behind her, a presentation froze mid-slide, displaying one name in bold letters. Ethan Holloway, VP of Marketing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kira said, her voice steady and cold as winter steel, "I have an announcement." Her eyes scanned the crowd until they found him. Ethan, standing near the bar with a blonde woman draped on his arm, his face draining of color as recognition hit him like a freight train. She smiled. It was a predator's smile. The smile of someone who'd waited 5 years for this exact moment. "As of tomorrow morning, I'm your new chief executive officer. And my first order of business? A complete restructuring of this company's leadership." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Starting with immediate terminations." Ethan's champagne glass slipped from his fingers, but he caught it at the last second, his hands shaking. The blonde woman beside him, his wife, Kira had learned from her research, whispered something, but he didn't respond. He couldn't. He was staring at Kira like she was a ghost, like she'd crawled out of his worst nightmare and materialized in front of Chicago's business elite. Good. Let him be terrified. Let him feel the floor crumble beneath his feet the way she had 5 years ago when he'd left her standing at the altar of Holy Name Cathedral in a $10,000 dress while 300 people watched her world end. "You seem shocked, Mr. Holloway," Kira continued, descending the staircase slowly, her heels clicking on marble like a countdown. "Did you really think I'd stay broken forever? Did you think the girl you humiliated would just disappear?" The room was silent except for her footsteps. 200 people held their breath, sensing blood in the water. This wasn't a corporate announcement. This was an execution. She reached the bottom of the stairs and walked straight toward him, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. Ethan stood frozen, his jaw clenched, his blue eyes wide with something between shock and fear. He'd aged in 5 years, gray streaking his dark hair, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, the confidence that used to radiate from him now replaced with something that looked like guilt. "Kira," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I didn't know you were going to buy this company?" She stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the panic in his eyes, close enough to smell his expensive cologne. The same one he'd worn on their wedding day. Funny how a billion-dollar investment fund can make things happen quickly. "I purchased controlling shares last week. The board voted me in this morning. And you?" She tilted her head, her smile sharpening. "You're going to walk into my office at 9 a.m. tomorrow and explain why I shouldn't fire you on the spot." The blonde woman gasped. "You can't." "I can," Kira interrupted, her eyes never leaving Ethan's. "And I will, unless he gives me one good reason not to." Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. What could he possibly say? "Sorry I destroyed you in front of everyone you loved because my family thought you weren't good enough? Sorry I chose money over you? Sorry I married someone else 6 months later while you were still putting your life back together?" "That's what I thought," Kira said. She turned to address the room, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Executive boardroom. Anyone who's late can join Mr. Holloway on the unemployment line." She handed the microphone to a stunned waiter, grabbed a fresh champagne glass from a passing tray, and raised it high. "To new beginnings," she said, her voice ringing out clear and triumphant. Then she drank the entire glass in one long swallow, set it down on a nearby table, and walked out of the ballroom with her head high and her heart hammering so hard she thought it might explode. Behind her, she heard the explosion of whispers, the shocked gasps, the chaos she'd unleashed. And for the first time in 5 years, Kira Bennett smiled a real smile. Revenge, she'd discovered, tasted even sweeter than she'd imagined. Outside the hotel, Chicago's November wind bit at her bare shoulders as she waited for her car. The valet brought her black Tesla, and she slid into the driver's seat, her hands finally starting to shake now that no one could see. She'd done it. After 5 years of planning, of building her career from ashes, of turning pain into power, she'd finally faced him. And tomorrow, the real reckoning would begin. Her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant, Marcus. "Did you really just do that?" Kira typed back, every word. Another text. "He's going to fight back. You know that, right?" Kira started the engine, watching the hotel disappear in her rearview mirror. She typed one final message. "Let him try. He broke me once. He doesn't get to do it twice." Then she drove into the Chicago night, toward the penthouse apartment she'd bought in the same neighborhood where she used to share a cramped studio with 2 roommates, toward the life she'd built from nothing, toward tomorrow morning when Ethan Holloway would walk into her office and finally understand what it cost to destroy someone who refused to stay destroyed. The engagement ring sparkled under the coffee shop lights. Kira couldn't stop staring at it, this delicate band of gold with a single diamond that Ethan had slipped onto her finger 3 months ago. She was getting married. In 2 weeks, she'd be Mrs. Ethan Holloway. The thought made her heart race with joy and terror in equal measure. She sat in their favorite corner of the grind, a tiny coffee shop near DePaul University where they'd spent countless late nights studying for the LSAT, dreaming about their futures. Ethan was finishing business school at Northwestern. Kira was working as a junior marketing coordinator at a small tech startup, barely making enough to cover her half of the rent in the studio apartment they shared in Logan Square. They were broke and in love and convinced that was enough. But lately, something had shifted. Ethan had become distant, taking phone calls from his father that lasted hours, coming home late smelling like scotch and stress. His family was the problem. The Holloways were Chicago royalty, old money, country club memberships, a mansion in Lake Forest with actual servants. Ethan's father, Richard, owned Holloway Enterprises, a real estate development company worth hundreds of millions. His mother, Patricia, came from a family whose name was on hospital wings and museum galleries. They'd smiled at Kira over Thanksgiving dinner, but their smiles were plastic, fake, the kind you give to someone who's temporary. Kira was from Pilsen, a working-class neighborhood where her Mexican immigrant mother cleaned houses, and her father had died when Kira was 12, leaving them with medical debt that took years to pay off. She'd put herself through DePaul on scholarships and student loans, working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night. She'd earned everything she had. But to the Holloways, she was just the help's daughter who'd somehow tricked their son into proposing. "You're too good for them," her best friend Lucia had said over drinks last week. "The way his mother looks at you? Like you're dirt on her Louboutins." But Kira had defended Ethan. He wasn't like them. He loved her. He'd chosen her. The coffee shop door chimed. Ethan walked in, and Kira's heart did that stupid flutter it always did. 6 feet tall, dark hair, blue eyes that used to look at her like she was the only person in the world. But today, those eyes were shadowed, troubled. He slid into the booth across from her, and she immediately knew something was wrong. "We need to talk," he said. Those 4 words. The ones that always meant bad news. Kira's stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" Ethan ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he made when he was stressed. "My parents want to have dinner with us. Tonight. They said it's important." "Okay," Kira said slowly. "That's good, right? Maybe they're finally warming up to me." But Ethan didn't smile. He looked down at his hands, and Kira noticed they were shaking slightly. "Ethan, you're scaring me. What's going on?" He looked up, and the guilt in his eyes made her chest tighten. "Just promise me something. Promise me that no matter what happens tonight, you'll remember that I love you." That should have been her warning. That should have been the moment she grabbed her coat and ran. Dinner was at Gibson's Steakhouse, the kind of place where a ribeye cost more than Kira's monthly groceries. She wore her nicest dress, a simple black number from Target that she'd bought on sale, and felt underdressed the moment she walked in. Richard and Patricia Holloway sat at a corner table, looking like they'd stepped out of a Ralph Lauren catalog. Patricia wore pearls. Actual pearls. Richard wore a suit that probably cost more than Kira's car. "Kira," Patricia said, her smile tight. "How lovely to see you. Please sit." The dinner started normally enough. Small talk about the weather, about Ethan's classes, about nothing important. But Kira could feel the tension building, could see Richard and Patricia exchanging looks across the table. Finally, after the appetizers were cleared, Richard set down his wine glass and looked directly at Kira. "We need to discuss the wedding," he said. "Of course," Kira replied, trying to smile. "We're so excited. 2 weeks away." "Yes," Patricia said, dabbing her lips with a napkin. "That's what we wanted to talk about. We think you should postpone." The world tilted. "What?" Kira looked at Ethan, but he was staring at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Postpone? Why? Richard leaned forward, his expression not unkind but firm, the look of a businessman closing a deal. You're both very young. Ethan hasn't even finished business school. You're just starting your career. We think it would be wise to wait a few years. Make sure this is what you really want. But that wasn't what he was saying. Kira could read between the lines. What he meant was, you're not good enough for our son. We're giving you an out. Take it. We don't want to wait, Kira said, her voice stronger than she felt. We love each other. We're ready. Patricia's smile sharpened. Love is wonderful, dear. But marriage requires more than love. It requires compatibility. Shared backgrounds. Similar values. The word hung in the air like a slap. Values. Code for class. For money. For everything Kira didn't have and could never be. Ethan, Kira said, turning to him, her heart pounding. Tell them. Tell them we're getting married no matter what. But Ethan didn't look at her. He just sat there, silent, and in that silence, Kira felt the first crack in her heart. The rest of dinner was a blur. Kira sat frozen while Richard explained, in his calm businessman voice, why the wedding should be postponed indefinitely. He talked about Ethan's future at Holloway Enterprises, about the importance of making smart decisions, about how rushing into marriage was a mistake young people often made. Patricia nodded along, occasionally adding comments about how they just wanted what was best for everyone. But Ethan said nothing. He sat there like a statue, pushing food around his plate, avoiding Kira's eyes. Finally, Kira couldn't take it anymore. Excuse me, she said, standing abruptly. I need some air. She walked out of the restaurant into Chicago's April evening, the cool air hitting her face like a splash of cold water. Her hands were shaking. Her chest felt tight. This couldn't be happening. Ethan followed her out a minute later. Kira, wait. She spun around. Wait. You want me to wait? You sat there and let them talk about postponing our wedding like I wasn't even in the room. They're just worried, Ethan said weakly. About what? That I'm not rich enough? That I'm not from the right family? That I clean houses like my mother? The words came out bitter, angry. Ethan flinched. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Kira's voice cracked. I've worked my entire life to be good enough. I put myself through college. I got a good job. I've done everything right. But to your parents, I'll never be enough because of where I come from. She stepped closer, tears burning her eyes but refusing to fall. So I need you to tell me, right now, looking me in the eyes, are we getting married in 2 weeks, or are you going to let them win? Ethan looked down at his shoes. Expensive leather shoes that probably cost more than Kira's rent. And in that moment, in the space between heartbeats, she knew. I need time, he finally said. Time for what? To think. To figure things out. My father, he said if I marry you now, he'll cut me off. No job at the company. No inheritance. Nothing. The words hit like physical blows. So it's about money. It's about my future. Ethan's voice rose, defensive. I've worked my whole life to be part of that company. It's my legacy. I can't just throw it away. But you can throw me away? Kira's voice was quiet now, deadly quiet. That's what this is, isn't it? You're choosing them over me. I'm asking for time, Ethan repeated, but his eyes were pleading. Just a few months. Let me talk to them, make them understand. We can still get married, just later. Kira laughed, but there was no humor in it. You really think postponing will change their minds? They'll find another excuse. Another reason I'm not good enough. And you'll keep choosing them because that's who you are. She pulled the engagement ring off her finger. It came off easier than it had gone on. Here, give this back to your mother. I'm sure she can find a nice society girl who meets the family standards. Kira, don't. She held up her hand, stopping him. I'm done, Ethan. I'm done begging to be chosen. I'm done trying to prove I'm worthy of love. Find someone who fits into your perfect little world. I'm going to build my own. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the sidewalk, her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall until she was out of his sight. She made it 3 blocks before she had to stop, pressing her back against a brick wall, finally letting the sobs come. This was supposed to be the happiest time of her life. In 2 weeks, she was supposed to walk down the aisle. The dress was already bought, hanging in her closet wrapped in plastic. The invitations had been sent. The cake was ordered. Her mother had taken time off work. Lucia had flown in from California to be her maid of honor. And now it was over. Over before it even began. Kira pulled out her phone and called Lucia. I need you, she said when her friend answered. Something happened. I'm on my way. Where are you? 20 minutes later, Lucia found her still sitting on that sidewalk, mascara streaking her face, her perfect dinner date ruined. What happened? Lucia asked, sliding down next to her. Kira told her everything. About the dinner, about Ethan's silence, about the ring she'd given back. About how she'd walked away from the only man she'd ever loved because loving him meant making herself smaller, and she was done being small. Good, Lucia said fiercely, wrapping her arm around Kira's shoulders. You deserve someone who chooses you first. Every single time. I called off the wedding, Kira whispered. Oh, honey, you did the right thing. But here's the thing Kira didn't tell Lucia. She hadn't actually called off the wedding. She'd ended the relationship, yes. But the wedding was still technically scheduled. Still 2 weeks away. And some small, stupid, hopeful part of her thought maybe Ethan would come to his senses. Maybe he'd fight for her. Maybe love would win. She was wrong. She'd never been more wrong about anything in her life. The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Kira woke up in her childhood bedroom in her mother's small house in Pilsen. Sunlight streaming through lace curtains her grandmother had made decades ago. For a moment, she forgot. Then reality crashed back. Today was her wedding day. Except she hadn't spoken to Ethan in 2 weeks. Not since that night outside the restaurant. He'd called, texted, left voicemails saying they needed to talk. But Kira had ignored all of it, too hurt and too angry and too proud to respond. If he wanted to marry her, he knew where to find her. He knew the wedding was today at 2 p.m. at Holy Name Cathedral. He knew she'd be there. The question was, would he? Her mother found her sitting on the edge of the bed, still in her pajamas. Mija, she said softly, sitting beside her. Are you sure you want to do this? I have to know, Kira said. I have to know if he'll show up. If he'll choose me. Her mother took her hand, work-worn and strong. And if he doesn't, then I'll have my answer. That's how Kira ended up in the bride's room at Holy Name Cathedral at 1:30 p.m., wearing a $10,000 dress her mother had saved for months to help pay for. Her hair and makeup done perfectly by professionals, looking like every bride's magazine fantasy. Lucia stood beside her in a lavender bridesmaid dress, her face tight with worry. Kira, I don't think he'll come, Kira interrupted. He has to come. But even as she said it, doubt crept in like poison. 300 people filled the church. Kira could hear them from the bride's room, murmuring, whispering, checking their watches. The groomsmen were there. She'd seen them arrive in their tuxedos. But no groom. Not yet. 1:45 p.m. He's probably just nervous, Lucia said, but she didn't sound convinced. 1:55 p.m. Kira's hands started shaking. Her mother held them steady, said nothing, just held her daughter's hands like she was a child again. 2 p.m. The wedding march started. This was it. Now or never. Kira stood, smoothed her dress, and took her uncle's arm because her father was dead and her uncle was the closest thing she had. You ready, Mija? He asked. No. She wasn't ready. But she nodded anyway. The doors opened. 300 faces turned to look at her. And at the end of that long aisle, standing at the altar in a tuxedo, was Ethan. Relief flooded through her so intense she almost cried. He came. He was here. He chose her. She started walking, each step bringing her closer to him, closer to their future, closer to forever. But something was wrong. Ethan wasn't smiling. His face was pale, almost gray. His hands were clenched at his sides. In the front pew, Richard and Patricia Holloway sat like statues, their expressions cold and hard. Kira was 10 feet away when she saw it. The look in Ethan's eyes. Guilt. Regret. Apology. And she knew. Before he opened his mouth, before the gasps, before the world ended, she knew. Kira, he said, his voice breaking. I can't do this. 300 people gasped as one. The organ music continued for 3 more terrible seconds before someone had the sense to stop it. Silence crashed down like a wave. Kira stood frozen, her uncle's arm the only thing keeping her upright. What? The word came out small, broken. Ethan took a step toward her, then stopped, like he was afraid to get too close. I'm so sorry. I thought I could do this. I thought I could stand up to my family, choose you, make it work. But I can't. His voice got louder, steadier, like he was convincing himself. My father made it clear. If I marry you, I lose everything. The company, my inheritance, my family. I can't give that up. I can't. Tears ran down his face, but Kira felt nothing. She was numb. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not now. Not in front of 300 people who would never let her forget this moment. "You're choosing money over me," she said, her voice hollow. "I'm choosing my future," Ethan said. "I'm sorry. I love you, but I can't do this." Behind her, Kira heard her mother's sharp intake of breath, heard Lucia curse under her breath, heard the explosion of whispers as 300 people began talking at once, their voices blending into a roar of shock and pity and judgment. Someone's phone flashed, taking a photo, probably, to post on social media later. This humiliation would live forever on the internet. Kira looked at the Holloways. Patricia's face was carefully blank, but Richard looked almost satisfied. They'd won. They'd broken her, destroyed her in the most public way possible, made sure everyone knew she wasn't good enough for their perfect son. Something inside Kira crystallized in that moment. Something hard and cold and unbreakable. She looked at Ethan one last time, memorized his face. The guilt, the weakness, the betrayal. "You're going to regret this," she said quietly. Only he could hear her. "One day you're going to realize what you gave up. And by then, it'll be too late." Then she turned, held her head high, and walked back down that aisle with every eye in the church burning into her back, her $10,000 dress trailing behind her like a shroud. Her heart shattered into pieces so small she didn't think they could ever be put back together. But she was wrong about that. Hearts can be rebuilt, just not into the same shape. And sometimes they come back sharper. Kira spent 3 days in her childhood bedroom crying. Then on the 4th day, she stopped. She woke up, looked at herself in the mirror, eyes swollen, face blotchy, hair a mess, and made a decision. Ethan Holloway had humiliated her. The Holloways had broken her. Chicago society had watched her fall. Fine. Let them think they'd won. She'd show them what rising from the ashes looked like. She sold the wedding dress online for half what she'd paid. Used the money to buy a new laptop and 3 business books. She called her boss at the tech startup and asked for more responsibility, more hours, more projects. She worked 16-hour days, threw herself into marketing campaigns with a fury that surprised everyone. Within 6 months, she'd tripled the company's social media engagement. Within a year, she'd led a campaign that brought in $2 million in new revenue. Her boss promoted her to marketing director. She was 24 years old and running an entire department. But it wasn't enough. Kira wanted more. She wanted power. Real power. The kind that made men like Richard Holloway sit up and pay attention. The kind that meant she'd never be dismissed again because of where she came from. She started taking night classes at Northwestern's business school, the same program Ethan had attended. She networked relentlessly, attending every tech conference, every startup mixer, every venture capital meeting she could find. She learned how to talk like them, dress like them, think like them. But she never forgot where she came from. Never forgot her mother's work-worn hands, or the medical debt that had defined her childhood, or the boy who'd thrown her away like she was worthless. Those memories became fuel. Lucia called her once a month from California, worried. "You're working too hard. When's the last time you went on a date? Had fun? Did anything besides work?" "Work is fun," Kira would say. "I'm building something." "You're building a fortress," Lucia corrected. "And you're locked inside it." Maybe she was right. Kira had gone on a few dates over the years, but they never went anywhere. She couldn't let anyone close. Couldn't risk getting hurt again. It was easier to focus on her career, on her goals, on the revenge she was carefully, methodically planning. Because yes, this was about revenge. She could admit that to herself, if no one else. Every promotion was a step closer. Every dollar saved was ammunition. Every skill learned was a weapon she'd eventually use. 2 years after the wedding that wasn't, Kira's startup was acquired by a larger company for $30 million. As marketing director, she received a payout of $500,000. It was more money than her mother had made in her entire life. Kira invested it all in a friend's new venture capital fund. That fund tripled in value in 18 months. Suddenly, Kira had money. Real money. The kind that opened doors that had been slammed in her face her entire life. She used it to make more. Invested in 3 more startups. 2 failed. 1 became a unicorn, selling for $800 million. Kira's stake was worth $12 million. She was 28 years old and a millionaire. The girl from Pilsen who cleaned houses was gone. In her place stood a woman who wore Armani suits, drove a Tesla, and had lunch meetings with venture capitalists who used to ignore her emails. But she still wasn't done. She heard things through the business grapevine. Ethan had married some socialite 6 months after their failed wedding. A girl named Madison with the right last name and the right connections. They had a big wedding at the Drake Hotel. The photos were in all the society pages. Kira had looked at them once, felt nothing, and closed her laptop. He was the past. She was the future. Then, 3 years after everything fell apart, Kira heard something interesting. Holloway Enterprises was in trouble. Richard's aggressive expansion had overextended the company. They'd taken on too much debt, made bad investments. They needed a cash infusion or a buyout. Kira smiled and started making phone calls. It took her a year of careful planning, strategic investments, and building alliances. She bought shares quietly through shell companies and investment funds. She made friends with board members. She positioned herself as a savior, a young, brilliant investor with fresh ideas and deep pockets. By the time Richard Holloway realized what was happening, it was too late. Kira controlled 40% of his company's shares. Not quite controlling interest, but enough to force a vote. Enough to demand a seat on the board. Enough to propose a merger with a company she'd secretly been building for the past 2 years. A company specifically designed to take over Holloway Enterprises. The board meeting was scheduled for a Monday morning. Kira walked into that conference room in a power suit, her hair pulled back, her face calm and professional. Richard Holloway's face went red when he saw her. "This is absurd," he sputtered. "I won't allow it." "You don't have a choice," Kira said calmly. "I have the votes. The merger goes through, or the company goes bankrupt. Your call." He chose the merger. He had to. And part of the deal, Kira became CEO of the newly formed company. She was 31 years old and controlled a billion-dollar empire. The same empire that had deemed her not good enough 5 years earlier. The irony was delicious. Kira's first day as CEO of Holloway Bennett Enterprises, she'd insisted her name be added. Started with that charity gala. The one where she'd shattered the champagne glass and publicly humiliated Ethan in front of Chicago's elite. It was petty. It was dramatic. It was also deeply satisfying. But the real work started the next morning. Kira arrived at the office at 6 a.m., 2 hours before anyone else. The building was a glass and steel tower in the Loop, 40 stories of corporate power. Her office was on the top floor, corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. She'd spent her first hour there just staring out at the city, at the sunrise painting the sky orange and pink, at the life she'd built from nothing. At 8:55 a.m., her assistant Marcus knocked on her door. "They're gathering in the boardroom," he said. "Ethan's already there. Looks like he didn't sleep." "Good," Kira said, standing and smoothing her black Armani suit. "Let's go." The executive boardroom was all glass and chrome, with a massive table that seated 20. 12 executives were already there, including Ethan. He sat at the far end, his hands clasped on the table, his face drawn and tired. He wore a navy suit, his hair styled perfectly, but there were dark circles under his eyes. "Good. Let him suffer." Kira took her seat at the head of the table. "Good morning," she said, her voice crisp and professional. "Thank you all for being on time. Let's begin." For the next hour, she outlined her vision for the company. Restructuring, new departments, different focus areas. Some people were nodding. Others looked worried, wondering if they'd still have jobs by the end of the month. Through it all, Ethan said nothing. He just stared at his hands, occasionally glancing up at her with an expression she couldn't read. Finally, Kira got to the part they were all waiting for. "There will be changes in leadership," she said. "Some of you will be promoted. Some of you will be reassigned. And some of you," she paused, letting the tension build, "will be terminated. I'll be meeting with each of you individually over the next week to discuss your future with this company." The meeting ended at 10 a.m. People filed out quickly, whispering among themselves. Ethan stood to leave, but Kira's voice stopped him. "Mr. Holloway, my office. Now." He turned, his jaw tight, and followed her down the hall. Marcus tried to follow, but Kira waved him off. "Hold my calls," she said, and closed the door. Alone in her office, Kira walked to her desk and sat down. Ethan stood in the middle of the room, his hands in his pockets, looking everywhere except at her. "Sit," she said. He sat in one of the leather chairs across from her desk. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, loaded with 5 years of hurt and anger and words that had never been said. Finally, Ethan broke it. "I didn't know you were part of the merger deal," he said quietly. "I didn't know until last night that you were the one buying us out." "Would it have mattered?" Kira asked. "Would you have done anything differently?" "I would have." He trailed off. "You would have what?" "Quit," Run away again? That seems to be your specialty. Ethan flinched. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Ethan. You humiliated me in front of 300 people. You chose your family's money over me. You married someone else 6 months later, while I was still trying to figure out how to get through a day without crying. Her voice was calm, controlled, but underneath was fury carefully leashed. So don't talk to me about fair. Ethan's face crumbled. I'm sorry. God, Kira, I'm so sorry. I've wanted to apologize for 5 years, but I didn't know how to find you. You disappeared. I didn't disappear, Kira said. I rebuilt myself. There's a difference. She leaned forward, her hands folded on the desk. I worked 16-hour days. I invested everything I had. I learned everything I could. I made myself into someone powerful enough that men like your father couldn't dismiss me anymore. And I did it all with one goal in mind. Revenge, Ethan said softly. Justice, Kira corrected. You owed me an apology. Your family owed me respect. And now, I have the power to demand both. She opened a folder on her desk and slid it across to him. This is your new contract. You'll be reassigned to the marketing department, reporting to the VP instead of being the VP. Your salary will be cut by 40%. Your stock options are revoked. And if you don't like it, you're welcome to quit. Ethan stared at the contract like it was a snake. You're demoting me. I'm giving you a choice, Kira said. You can stay, prove you're more than just your father's name, and maybe earn back some of what you lost. Or you can walk away like you did 5 years ago. Either way, I win. Ethan looked up at her, and for the first time, she saw real pain in his eyes. I deserved everything you just said. I was weak. I let my father control me. I threw away the best thing in my life because I was too afraid to stand up to him. I know, Kira said. That's why I'm enjoying this so much. 3 weeks into Kira's reign as CEO, the office had settled into a tense new normal. Some executives had been fired. Others had been promoted. The company was being restructured from the ground up, and while some people resisted, most fell in line. Kira's reputation for ruthless efficiency preceded her. But Ethan was different. He'd signed the contract, taken the demotion, shown up every day at 8 a.m. sharp, and worked harder than anyone else in his department. He never complained, never pushed back, just did his job with a quiet determination that surprised everyone, including Kira. She found herself watching him sometimes, through her office window when he was in meetings. Watching the way he'd changed. He was quieter now, more thoughtful. The arrogance that had once radiated from him was gone, replaced by something that looked like humility. Or maybe just exhaustion. Kira told herself she didn't care. This was business. This was revenge. His suffering was the point. But late at night, when she was alone in her penthouse apartment overlooking the Chicago skyline, she'd remember other things. The way he used to make her laugh until her stomach hurt. The way he'd brought her coffee during all-night study sessions, remembered exactly how she liked it. The way he'd looked at her like she was the only person in the world who mattered. Before his family destroyed that. Before he let them. On a Thursday afternoon in December, Marcus knocked on her office door with an unusual expression. Something between concern and amusement. Mr. Holloway is here to see you. Says it's urgent. Kira frowned. They'd barely spoken since that first day. She'd made sure of it, conducting all business through department heads and emails. Keeping distance. Maintaining control. Send him in. Ethan entered, and immediately Kira knew something was wrong. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled, and there was an intensity in his eyes she hadn't seen since their law school days. We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him without asking permission. About what? Kira kept her voice cool, professional. About Madison. His wife's name hung between them like a grenade. I'm filing for divorce. Kira felt something shift in her chest, but refused to name it. That's personal. Why are you telling me? Because she's threatening to go to the press. She knows about us, about what happened 5 years ago. She wants to tell everyone that you orchestrated this whole thing as revenge. Ethan ran his hand through his hair. She has evidence. Photos of you at my wedding, emails you sent to investors, timeline documentation. She's going to make you look like some kind of obsessed ex who destroyed an entire company for payback. Kira leaned back in her chair, her mind already running through scenarios, legal strategies, PR responses. This was exactly the kind of scandal that could unravel everything she'd built. The media would eat it up. Scorned woman takes revenge on the man who left her at the altar. Never mind that she'd earned every bit of her success legitimately. Never mind that the merger had been good for the company. The narrative would destroy her. "Why are you warning me?" she asked. "You could let her do it. Get me fired. Get your position back." Ethan met her eyes, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. "Because despite everything, despite how badly I screwed up, I never stopped caring about what happened to you. And because," he took a step closer, "because she's right. I did marry her for the wrong reasons. My father chose her. I went along with it because that's what I did back then, whatever they told me to. But I've spent 5 years in a marriage to someone I don't love, wondering every single day what my life would have been like if I'd been brave enough to choose you." "Don't," Kira said sharply, standing up. "Don't do that. Don't try to rewrite history now that it's convenient." "I'm not rewriting anything. I'm admitting the truth. I was a coward. I let my father manipulate me. I broke your heart in the worst possible way. And I've regretted it every single day since." His voice cracked. "Do you have any idea what it's been like? Watching you succeed, become this incredible force, knowing I gave that up? Knowing I could have been part of your life instead of the villain in your story." Kira's hands clenched into fists. 5 years of buried emotion threatened to surface. Rage, hurt, and something more dangerous. Something that felt too much like the ghost of old feelings. "You made your choice," she said. "And I made mine. I chose myself. I chose my career. I chose power over love because love is what destroyed me. So whatever you're feeling now, that's your problem, not mine. Kira, get out." Her voice was ice. "Deal with your wife. Handle the press. Do whatever you need to do. But don't come into my office talking about regret. I don't have time for it." Ethan stared at her for a long moment, something like pain flickering across his face. Then he nodded once and left, the door clicking shut behind him. Alone, Kira sank back into her chair and pressed her palms against her eyes. She wouldn't cry. She'd stopped crying over Ethan Holloway 5 years ago. But her hands were shaking, and her heart was racing. And for the first time since she'd walked into that boardroom, she wondered if revenge was supposed to feel this empty. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lucia. "Saw the gossip sites. Madison Holloway is shopping a story about you. Call me." Kira stared at the message. Then she did what she always did when things got complicated. She got back to work. If Madison wanted a war, she'd get one. But she'd learned the same lesson everyone else had learned. You don't come for Kira Bennett unless you're ready to lose everything. The story broke on Friday morning. Tech CEO's secret revenge. How Kira Bennett orchestrated a billion-dollar takeover to destroy the man who left her at the altar. It was everywhere, Chicago Tribune, TechCrunch, even picked up by CNN Business. The article painted Kira as a scorned woman who'd spent 5 years plotting revenge, buying up shares, manipulating investors, all to humiliate Ethan Holloway. Madison had given an exclusive interview, complete with photos and documents. She played the victim beautifully, the innocent wife caught in the crossfire of an obsessive ex's vendetta. The board called an emergency meeting. Kira sat at the head of the table while 12 executives stared at her with varying expressions of shock, concern, and in some cases, barely concealed satisfaction. Some of them had never wanted a woman CEO. This was their chance to push her out. Richard Holloway, who still sat on the board despite losing control of the company, looked almost gleeful. "This is unacceptable," he said. "We cannot have a CEO whose personal vendetta has become public scandal. It reflects poorly on the entire company." "I agree," said another board member, a man named Thompson who'd been loyal to Richard for decades. "Ms. Bennett, perhaps it's time to consider stepping down until this blows over." "Stepping down?" Kira's voice was calm, but underneath was steel. "Let me be clear. Everything I did was legal. Every share purchased, every investment made, every decision, all by the book. Madison Holloway is a bitter woman going through a divorce, lashing out at whoever she can hurt. That's not grounds for my resignation." "But the optics," Thompson started. "The optics," Kira interrupted, "will be fine once we release the actual facts, which include the financial reports showing this company was drowning before I took over, which include testimony from investors about why they chose to work with me. Because I'm brilliant at what I do, not because of some personal grudge, which include documentation of every legitimate business decision I've made." She stood, leaning forward with her hands on the table. "So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to hold a press conference this afternoon. I'm going to tell my side of the story. And you're all going to sit here and decide whether you want to support a CEO who saved this company, or whether you want to side with a man who ran it into the ground. She looked directly at Richard. Your call. The press conference was scheduled for 3 p.m. in the lobby of the building. Kira spent 2 hours preparing with her PR team, going over talking points, anticipating questions. Marcus brought her coffee and a concerned look. You sure about this? He asked. Talking publicly about the wedding is going to be painful. Pain is temporary, Kira said. Losing everything I've built would be permanent. At 2:45 p.m., there was a knock on her door. Ethan walked in, and Kira's first instinct was to tell him to leave. But something in his expression stopped her. I'm coming to the press conference, he said. I'm going to tell them the truth. All of it. You don't have to do that, Kira said. Yes, I do. Madison's making you the villain because I was too much of a coward to be honest about what really happened. About why I left you. About the pressure from my father, the threats, the manipulation. He took a deep breath. I'm going to tell them that you didn't orchestrate some revenge plot. You just became successful despite what I did to you. And that's not revenge, that's justice. Kira studied him. 5 years ago, she would have done anything to hear him say these words. To have him stand up for her, choose her, fight for her. But now it felt too late and too much all at once. Why? She asked. Why now? You had 5 years to tell the truth. Because 5 years ago, I was still that scared kid who did whatever his father told him. But watching you these past few weeks, seeing the leader you've become, the strength you have, it made me realize I spent 5 years being exactly what you accused me of being. A coward. His voice dropped. I can't change the past, but I can stop Madison from destroying your future. The press conference room was packed. Cameras, reporters, microphones. Kira walked to the podium with her head high, Ethan beside her. The questions came fast and brutal. Ms. Bennett, did you buy Holloway Enterprises as revenge? Mr. Holloway, is your marriage ending because of your history with Ms. Bennett? Is it true you never got over being left at the altar? Kira let them ask. Then she spoke. 5 years ago, I was humiliated in the worst way possible. The man I loved chose his family's money over me. That's a fact. But here's another fact. I didn't spend 5 years plotting revenge. I spent 5 years becoming successful. I built companies. I made smart investments. I earned everything I have. She paused, meeting the cameras directly. When the opportunity came to merge with Holloway Enterprises, I took it. Not because of Ethan Holloway, but because it was a good business decision. A profitable decision. A decision that has, by the way, increased the company's value by 30% in 3 weeks. Then Ethan stepped forward. I need to say something. The room went quiet. Kira Bennett didn't ruin my life. I ruined hers. 5 years ago, my father told me that if I married her, he'd cut me off from everything. The family business, my inheritance, my future. And I was weak enough to listen. I left a woman I loved standing at an altar because I was too afraid to stand up to my parents. His voice was raw, honest. Madison's story is a lie. Kira didn't orchestrate some revenge scheme. She just succeeded without me. And that's what really bothers people, that the girl they dismissed became more powerful than any of them. He looked at Kira. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want everyone to know, Kira Bennett earned her success. And if you're looking for a villain in this story, look at me. The press conference changed everything. Within hours, the narrative shifted. Social media erupted with support for Kira. #girlboss, #revenge-turned-success, #she didn't need him trending nationwide. Madison's interview was picked apart, her credibility questioned. Richard Holloway released a statement distancing himself from the controversy, but the damage was done. His reputation as a manipulative father who destroyed his son's happiness was cemented. The board voted unanimously to keep Kira as CEO. Even Thompson, Richard's loyal friend, voted in her favor. The numbers didn't lie. The company was thriving under her leadership. That night, Kira returned to her penthouse exhausted but victorious. She poured herself a glass of wine and stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching Chicago's lights twinkle below. She'd won. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd sacrificed, it had paid off. So why did she still feel hollow? Her phone rang. Ethan. She almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Thank you, she said when she picked up. For today. For telling the truth. I should have told it 5 years ago, Ethan replied. There was noise in the background, wind, traffic. Where are you? Outside your building. Can I come up? Please. 5 minutes. Every logical part of Kira's brain screamed no. But she found herself saying, okay. When he arrived, he looked different than he had at the press conference. More vulnerable. Less put together. His tie was gone, his jacket wrinkled. He'd been crying. She could tell from his eyes. Madison served me with divorce papers an hour ago, he said. I'm officially being sued for emotional distress, defamation, and about 6 other things her lawyers made up. My father called to tell me I'm an embarrassment to the family. And my mother, he laughed bitterly. She's planning a charity luncheon like none of this is happening. I'm sorry, Kira said, and meant it. Not because she felt sorry for him, he'd brought this on himself, but because she understood what it was like to have your world implode. Are you? Ethan asked, looking at her with those blue eyes that still, damn it, made her heart skip. Sorry. Or satisfied. Both maybe. I don't know anymore. Kira set down her wine glass. What do you want, Ethan? Why are you really here? Because I need you to know something. He took a step closer. When I left you at that altar, I told myself I was making the smart choice. The practical choice. I'd have my career, my family's approval, my future. Another step. But I was wrong. I've spent 5 years with a woman I don't love, working in a company that means nothing to me, living a life that feels empty. And every single day, I thought about you, wondered what you were doing, if you were happy, if you'd found someone who deserved you. Ethan, let me finish. He was close now, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the gray at his temples, the lines around his eyes. I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know what I did was unforgivable. But watching you these past weeks, seeing the woman you've become, it made me realize that I'm still in love with you. I never stopped. And I know that's selfish and complicated and probably the last thing you want to hear, but I had to tell you. Kira's breath caught. 5 years. 5 years she'd waited to hear those words. 5 years she'd fantasized about this moment. Him realizing what he'd lost, coming back, begging for another chance. But now that it was happening, she didn't feel triumph. She felt conflicted. You're right, she said quietly. It is the last thing I want to hear. Ethan flinched. Because I spent 5 years building walls, Kira continued. 5 years making sure I'd never be vulnerable again. Never let anyone have the power to hurt me the way you did. And now you're standing here, asking me to what? Tear those walls down. Risk everything again. I'm not asking for anything, Ethan said. I just needed you to know that I was wrong. That leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. That if I could go back and do it differently. But you can't, Kira interrupted. You can't go back. Neither can I. The girl you left at that altar? She doesn't exist anymore. She died that day. And the woman I became. Her voice cracked despite her best efforts. She doesn't know how to trust people. Especially you. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. I know. And I hate that I did that to you. That I killed that part of you. But Kira, he reached out slowly, carefully, like she might shatter. Is there any part of you that still feels something? Anything at all? She should have said no. Should have told him to leave, close the door on this chapter forever. That would have been the smart thing, the safe thing. But Kira had spent 5 years being smart and safe, and standing here with him this close, she realized something terrifying. She still felt something. Not the naive love of her younger self, but something deeper. Something that recognized him despite all the years and hurt between them. Something that remembered how it felt to be loved by him, before fear and family and money destroyed it. Yes, she whispered. I feel something. And I hate that I do. I hate that you can still affect me like this. Ethan's hand cupped her face gently, and she didn't pull away. I'm not asking you to forgive me tomorrow. Or next week. Or next year. But maybe we could try to figure out who we are now. Without the pressure. Without the expectations. Just us. Kira closed her eyes, feeling tears she'd refused to shed for 5 years finally break free. I don't know if I can trust you again. Then let me earn it, Ethan said. However long it takes. I'll prove that I'm not that scared boy anymore. That I'll choose you every single time, no matter what. And then he kissed her. Soft. Careful. A question, not a demand. And Kira, the woman who'd sworn she'd never let him close again, kissed him back. 6 months later, Kira stood in her office watching snow fall over Chicago. The company was thriving. They'd acquired 2 more startups, launched a revolutionary app, and doubled their revenue. She'd been featured in Forbes, given a keynote speech at a tech conference, and been named one of Chicago's most influential business leaders. The girl from Pilsen had made it. Really made it. But the best part, she'd done it on her own terms. Ethan had kept his promise. He hadn't pushed, hadn't demanded, hadn't tried to rush her into anything. He'd filed for divorce from Madison, moved into a modest apartment in Lincoln Park, and focused on rebuilding his life. He showed up to work every day, did his job well, and slowly, very slowly, earned back the respect he'd lost. They'd had coffee a few times, dinner twice, conversations that were tentative at first, but gradually became easier. She told him about the years after the wedding, the crying, the rebuilding, the loneliness. He told her about his marriage to Madison, the emptiness, the pretending, the regret. They didn't rush into anything. Kira was too smart for that, too careful. But one night in March, after a particularly brutal board meeting, Ethan had knocked on her office door with takeout from their old favorite restaurant. "You looked stressed," he'd said. "Thought you could use a friend." They'd eaten on her office floor, backs against the couch, talking about everything and nothing. And somewhere between the lo mein and the fortune cookies, she'd realized something. She wasn't over him. Maybe she never would be. But more importantly, she didn't want to be. Not this version of him. Not the man who'd spent 6 months proving he could be better. "I think I'm ready," she'd said that night. Ethan had looked at her confused. "Ready for what?" "To try again. To see if we can be something real this time. No families interfering. No money complicating things. Just us." Ethan had stared at her like she'd given him the moon. "Are you sure? Because Kira, I swear to God, if you give me another chance, I won't screw it up. I'll spend every day proving that She'd kissed him to shut him up. And that's how it started. Again, differently. They kept it quiet at first. No need to give the office gossip mill more ammunition. But eventually people noticed. The way Ethan looked at her in meetings. The way she smiled at something he said. The way they left together sometimes, her hand brushing his in the elevator when they thought no one was watching. Lucia flew in from California, demanded the full story over drinks. "So you're really doing this?" she'd asked, skeptical. "After everything?" "I am," Kira had said. "But it's different now. I'm different. And so is he." "He better be," Lucia had said. "Because if he hurts you again, I'll fly back here and destroy him myself." Kira had laughed. "Get in line." But Ethan didn't hurt her. He proved day after day that he'd changed. When his father called demanding he leave the company and stop embarrassing the family, Ethan told him no. When his mother tried to guilt him into reconciling with Madison, he hung up on her. When society pages speculated about his relationship with Kira, he ignored them. He chose her. Every single time. Just like he should have done 5 years ago. On a warm June evening, Ethan took Kira back to Navy Pier where he'd proposed the first time. "Is this a good idea?" she'd asked, nervous. "Facing our past?" "Yeah, I think it is." They'd walked to the same spot, watched the sunset paint the sky pink and orange, listened to tourists laughing and children screaming on the Ferris wheel. "5 years ago, I asked you to marry me right here," Ethan said, his hand finding hers. "And 2 weeks later, I destroyed everything. I don't expect you to forget that. Hell, I don't want you to forget it. Because that pain, that humiliation, it made you into the incredible woman standing next to me." He turned to face her fully. "I'm not asking you to marry me. Not tonight. Maybe not for a long time. But I am asking you to believe that I've changed. That the scared boy who let his father control him is gone. And in his place is a man who knows exactly what he wants." "And what do you want?" Kira asked, her heart pounding. "You. Every version of you. The vulnerable girl who believed in love. The powerful CEO who conquered the world. All of it. For as long as you'll have me." Kira looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who'd broken her heart and spent months putting it back together. At the man who'd finally chosen her over everything else. At the man who'd proven that sometimes people really do change. "Okay," she said. "But we're doing this my way. Slow. Careful. And if you ever, let your family or anyone else come between us again." "I won't," Ethan said firmly. "I promise you, Kira. I'll choose you every single day for the rest of my life." And he did. They dated for 2 years. Moved in together after the first year. Built a life that was theirs. Not his family's, not society's, just theirs. Kira kept running the company, kept breaking barriers, kept being brilliant. Ethan supported her, worked beside her, and never once asked her to be smaller so he could feel bigger. And one December evening, exactly 7 years after he'd left her at the altar, Ethan proposed again. Not at Navy Pier. Not at some grand public gesture. Just in their apartment, in front of the fireplace, with snow falling outside and their whole lives ahead of them. Yes, Kira said, tears streaming down her face. Yes. They got married in a small ceremony at City Hall. No cathedral. No 300 guests. No pressure or expectations or families trying to control them. Just them, Lucia as witness, and a judge who pronounced them husband and wife. Later, at dinner, Lucia raised her glass. To Kira, who turned heartbreak into power, revenge into success, and pain into purpose. You're the strongest person I know. To second chances, Ethan added, looking at his wife with eyes full of love and gratitude. And to women who are brave enough to give them. Kira smiled, her hand in his, her heart finally at peace. To choosing yourself first, she said. Because that's what made all the rest possible. And in that moment, she realized something profound. She'd started this journey wanting revenge. Wanting to hurt the man who'd hurt her. But what she'd found instead was so much better. She'd found herself. Her strength. Her power. And eventually, when she was ready, she'd found love again. The right kind of love. The kind that didn't ask her to be smaller or quieter or less than she was. The kind that celebrated every part of who she'd become. 5 years ago, Ethan Holloway had rejected her at the altar. And yes, she'd returned as his boss. But more importantly, she'd returned as herself. Fully. Finally. Powerfully. And that was the greatest revenge of all. What lesson did this story teach you? That the best revenge is becoming everything they said you couldn't be? Or that second chances are possible when someone truly changes? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if Kira's journey from heartbreak to power inspired you, smash that like button and subscribe to Whispered Love for more stories about love, strength, and second chances. What story should I tell next? Let me know below.